So, if you've played Mortal Kombat before, I'm sure you have played the Classic Tower at least one time. And honestly, while it is a good experience, there is some stuff that is genuinely kinda dull about it. Now, don't get me wrong, Classic Tower is a fine experience, I play it all the time and I have fun playing it, but I feel like there's just some room for improvement that Classic Tower could do. So, that's kind of what I want to explain in this video, some things that make Classic Tower dull and what could be improved. So first of all, let's talk about the core idea of Classic Tower, basically what it tries to do. So, if you're not familiar with what Classic Tower is, it's pretty much a simulation of what Mortal Kombat was when it first released on arcade. That being the first three games, from the first game all the way to Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. And the whole idea is you have a bunch of opponents that you have to defeat, ideally 10, and you have to defeat them all, and then you face the final boss at the end, and then you win. So it sounds just like a simple idea. And while that is a good idea on paper, in practice it does have a few things that are kinda lacking, and that's what I'll explain in this video. So we'll start off with the first one, that being infinite continues, at least on home consoles. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the original arcade Mortal Kombat games, at least the ones that were on arcade machines, to put it lightly, they require a coin, ideally a quarter, to be able to play. So basically that would count as credit in the arcade world. And you need 2 credit to play the game and also use a continue if you lose, and it sounds like a simple idea. But as we know, Mortal Kombat became more and more popular on home consoles, since Deadly Alliance became the first game to be not on arcade, so console only. That being on PS2, OG Xbox, and GameCube. And while it's good that we get Mortal Kombat on home consoles, it generates an obvious side effect of giving you infinite continues. Now, to be fair, you can do near infinite continues on the original arcade if you just bring a huge quarterback, but you'll eventually run out of those, so not exactly infinite compared to on home consoles. And in my opinion, that kind of breaks the charm of what the arcade ladder is supposed to be. So essentially, if you lose, you just continue like nothing happened, and yeah, that kind of just breaks what the arcade experience is supposed to be. You just have to spend something to continue, and if you run out of what you need to continue, well, you have to start over then. That's not to say that Mortal Kombat on home consoles never did limited continues. They did try that idea with the first Mortal Kombat game, at least on Sega Genesis, and also Mortal Kombat 4 on PS1, N64, and MK Gold, that being MK4's Dreamcast port. So yes, they have done that idea before, but they've only ever done it for like 2 games as far as I know. Of course, I'm not sure if they did it for Mortal Kombat 2 and 3, at least on the Genesis ports, but I know that MK1 and 4 do that. The second issue, at least in MK1, not every Mortal Kombat game has this issue, but the lack of a sub-boss. So, a lot of Mortal Kombat games have a sub-boss, which for MK9, for example, there's 2 sub-bosses in MK9, though. I don't know if the fight against Shang Tsung in match 8 counts, but well, let's assume it does. And then the second to last fight before Shao Kahn would be either Goro or Kintaro. So yeah, MK9 has 2 sub-bosses. And MKX also continues the idea of a sub-boss, where the second to last match before Shinnok would be Goro again. So yeah, MKX continues the idea of a sub-boss in arcade ladders. The only outlier for sub-bosses would be MK11, which completely omitted the idea of a sub-boss. I mean, the second to last fight is just an entirely random opponent, and then afterwards it's straight to Kronika. MK1 also doesn't technically have a sub-boss, although the second to last fight before Titan Shang Tsung is always the mirror match. Though technically that doesn't count as a sub-boss, since mirror matches are pretty much encountered in every Mortal Kombat game. Though it's only the original game and MK1 that force you to fight a mirror match, but any other game you can try to play an arcade ladder without actually running to a mirror match. A third issue, which again also more or less just applies to MK1, is the boss not being entirely interesting. Now, MK9's final boss is Shao Kahn, but he was kind of a tough boss actually. Though, interestingly, the Shao Kahn AI in MK9 actually has some restrictions, which True Underdog did make a video on, just discussing on stuff Shao Kahn isn't supposed to do in Arcade Ladder, which I'll link that video in the pinned comment if you want to watch that for yourself. Then MKX's final boss is Shinnok, who isn't as interesting as Shao Kahn, but I still think he was okay to fight against. Even his corrupted form, he was kind of fun, actually. I think he was okay. But then Kronika in MK11 is not that fun to fight. I mean, not only does she appear hard at first, it's also really easy to cheese if you know what you're actually doing. Meaning, the bosses cannot duck or jump, and Kronika is no exception. So, if you know what you're doing on certain characters, you can totally cheese Kronika, and it gets too old. And Titan Shinsun is at least an improvement upon Kronika, meaning he actually is challenging to fight, but he's more or less just the same as fighting Shinsun normally, meaning he has all the same attacks and whatnot. So Titan Shinsun doesn't have any unique attacks, and you can't even shapeshift, which is kinda dumb seeing Shinsun not shapeshift. Also, another interesting thing about the bosses in MK9 and X is that they actually have more health than playable characters. I mean, Goro and Kintaro both have 150 health, and Shao Kahn has 200% health in MK9. Corrupted Shinnok has 125% health, though those are the only sub-boss and bosses that actually have more health. So Kronika, Titan Shinsun do not have extra health. It wouldn't make sense for Kronika to not have extra health since she does throw in extra enemies that you'll fight, but for Titan Shinsun, again, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it's just the same as fighting Shinsun normally. And lastly, the fourth and final issue for arcade ladders is the lack of reward you get. Now, MKX and 11 does let you get a small amount of coins for completing Classic Tower, but it's not really huge since it's only like 100 at most, at least depending on how many points you've gotten overall, but MK9 and MK1 you don't really get any reward, especially Dragon Crystals, which you can only ever get by in-app purchasing or character mastery for some reason. Like, the game has been out for almost a year and yet they still don't let you get Dragon Crystals anywhere else. It's really weird. So now that we've discussed the four main issues and drawbacks on Classic Tower, let's discuss what can we improve upon Classic Tower. So, I know NetherRealm Studios is probably not gonna address any of this, but I still propose a few solutions to improve Classic Tower experience to make it more like what a real arcade experience would be. So here's a few solutions I would propose. Now, the first solution would obviously be having limited continues, but I don't want to make infinite continues outright omitted, so for infinite continues, we can make it sort of where you have to input a cheat code, kind of like the Ultimate Armor in Mega Man X4, 5, 6, and 8. And I also forgot to mention when recording the line is that the first game on Genesis also has the Dord code, and there's a cheat for that those you give infinite continues, so that can work the same way too. So, that being, you have to insert a certain code before you actually start. And for limited continues, it would be kind of like Smash Bros. Classic mode, where you choose how many lives you want to do. So, I mean, for MK1, for example, you choose how many continues you want, either 1, 2, 3, or 5, or you can do 0. So that way, we can still keep the arcade experience with limited continues, while also not straight up removing infinite continues. Instead, just making them more or less an option, at least either by a cheat code or in the options menu. The second solution is adding the sub-boss, so meaning anything besides the mirror match, which it can still keep, but reduce it to only the third class match. The second class match can be a fixed opponent, I mean, it can be anyone really, though it's hard to know who can be the sub-boss, though I would kind of suggest General Xiao and Goro. I mean, cameo Goro, but Xiao's kind of a low-tier character, so it probably wouldn't work too well, but let me know in the comments who you think should be the sub-boss. Or especially if it should be a non-playable character like in MK9. A third solution is actually improving Titan Shang Tsung, so either one of two ways. The first way is giving him more health, though that doesn't sound as logical since Shang Tsung in the original game did more or less have the same health, so it wouldn't really be all that important to give him extra health in MK1. And then the second option is we can give him new attacks unique to him, so meaning stuff that normal Shang Tsung would not do. So mostly I would suggest the shapeshifting return. Though I'm sure you can shapeshift as normal Shang Tsung, but only as the character your opponent is, so you can't shapeshift to other characters. And the last solution is obviously being able to get rewards, mainly Dragon Crystals from playing Classic Tower. Though the issue with that is we have to find out how many we'd actually get without being able to get too many Dragon Crystals. Though I do have a proposal on how many we would actually get for each tier. So my proposal is for Novice tier we would only be able to get 15 Dragon Crystals. For Warrior you would get 30, Champion would be 45, the Endless would be the amount of rooms you've beaten times 3. So meaning if you beat 10 rooms but lost in the 11th, you would only get 30 Dragon Crystals. And then Survive would be the same idea, but it's 5 times, so meaning 10 rooms, but if you lose in the 11th, it would be 50 instead. So it would sound too much, but since you can't get Dragon Crystals anywhere else besides in-app purchases, it would at least help somewhat. And that's just about it for this video, and so overall, Classic Tower is an okay experience, but there could still be some room for improving. This means stuff like actually being able to get rewards and the final boss being actually fun to fight, besides Carl Pit Shinnok, would honestly kind of help a lot, at least for me, since I play Classic Tower all the time, again. So, yeah, but let me know what you think in the comments, and if you found the video good, then be sure to give it a like, and if this is the first video you've seen by me, then subscribe, and ring the bell for more videos, and that's pretty much it. See ya. Oh yeah, and also, Lord Havoc can also be a good idea for a Aftermath Tower where he's the final boss instead of Titan Shang Tsung. That would be a cool idea too.